Hey everyone, it's Kelvin again, and welcome back to my channel. So what I have here is a small Clojure project that I set up, but we have both the source directory and a resources directory inside of our class path. And right now I just have one alias of run, which will just run example core. Just to show that this is a very simple project, it's a hello world. So what we're going to be doing today is how to create a configuration file or how to interact with environment variables. And to do that, we're going to use a library called Aero, and I'm not really sure why their logo or mascot thing is a chocolate bar, but we'll roll with it. So first we're gonna add the library, and the version number is 1.1.6 at the time of the recording, so it might be different. That's just a small disclaimer that I have to give, but that's okay. So inside of the dependency map, let's add Aero, and it needs to be fully qualified, so we'll just add another slash, and then the version number is 1.1.6, and let's play around with this. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is require arrow.core, and arrow.core exposes a function called reconfig that we can use. And just to make things a little easier, let's start a REPL so we can interact with our code. Cool, and I need to connect, and we're connected. Now let's see, reconfig. So reconfig takes in a file path, and that's the reason why we have a resources directory here. So let's create a configuration file called config.eden, and let's just use the example on the readme, which says world. And if we just do config.eden here, this should read the file, and no such file or directory. Oh, it looks like we need to actually read in the string. So I'm gonna wrap this and interop with Java so that we have access to the resource directory. And now this should be able to give us the configuration file that we just created. And it does in this little map. Now so far this isn't super useful since we could just create a map here. So let's add to our config.eden file and create a property like port that you would normally see inside of a backend server. And let's go with 3000. Now back in core, if we evaluate this, we'll get port. So still not quite there. Now here's the cool part. We can replace the 3000 with the environment variable of port. And then Eden will read this and then it'll give us back whatever available inside of port. So if we go back to core, right now we don't have a port specified. So this returns us no. And this is where in most backend projects, you'll have a .env file. Well, that is right here. Don't mind the other files, they're just like part of my setup. But here we'll have something called ports, and we can set this one to 3000. But this is still not going to give us the port number. We'll still get null here, and that's because we're not exporting port to the environment. So let's get all of this, and we're going to put inside of main. And actually, let's just print this, and I'll get rid of this hello world. So to populate that port, we can open up another terminal, make sure that we define port, so port 3000, before we run our Clojure program. And this time we have 3000 set. We can also change this to something else like, I don't know, 6969, and that'll change the port number because we're feeding into this program a different value. Now we can do some more other stuff with this config here. So say you want a fallback, you could put this inside of a vector like this, and then use another tag. This time it's gonna be or, and this one's gonna be 8080. And what this will do is Aero will look for the tag here. The tag literal is what it's called. And since this is an or, it'll look into the list and pick the one that's truthy, and that'll be the 8080. And what's being sent back from the reconfig is just the 8080. Now there's too many tags to go over. You could always go to the main repo and read through the readme to get all of it. But I think a better example is to just run through a env file and show how we could set up a configuration file to match the environment. Now I do kind of want to point out that the Clojure community doesn't really like env or environment variables in general for two main reasons. And one is if someone were to go into your Linux server, it's very easy to just leak secrets. They can just SSH in and then echo what they assume, or not so much assume, but like predict what your environment variable is and echo it. And I'm going to use home as an example here because home is exported in all Linux machines, and that's just the path to my home directory. But they could do the same thing for something like AWS secret, and that would be bad. The other big problem is that every environment variable is always read in as a string, so you need to coerce this inside your code, which can be annoying, but I don't think that's that big of an issue. So the solution to that theoretical idea is just to make sure all your secrets are in a file that's being read rather than in the environment of your server. So I think an env file is okay as long as it's not doing this export everything and then you add it. And also, we live in an age where everything's dockerized and containerized, so I think it's fine. Let's go back to config.eden, and I have 2 panels up. So first, let's solve that type problem where we're gonna make this port number into a number. So it's gonna be of type long. I think that's the right type. We could make it a double. I'm unsure if there's an int, but let's try that first. We can do the same thing for JWT secret. That one is pretty much straightforward. We're still using the OR. Now the database URL is going to be a little different because we need to use the protocol of whatever database we're using. Right now it's going to be SQL because that's what I'm used to. But we need a way to add all the environment variables. This will be DB host, followed by the port, then the database name, followed by the user, and password as query params. Now you're probably asking why I wrote it out like this in a giant vector. And that's because there's also another tag literal that we can use called join, which will create one long string that combines all of these environment variables. Now, once again, if we were to go back to core, the DB URL is going to look weird because there's going to be a lot of nils. No reader for tag int. Yeah, I thought so. Alright, let's change this back to long. Alright, so we have the 8080. This time it's a number, or it was already a number. I don't know why I needed to do that. That's fine. And now our database URL is one long string. It's just all the parts that we needed added are missing. And that's okay, because right now this is inside of the REPL. We want this to run with the project. So we need to do the same thing where we add all the environment variables before our program. So run like this, but we want to read it from the file. And I believe I can do that by doing shell option C, file name, and then run. If I'm wrong, I'll look this up. I have to do it like this. Permission denied. All right, let me look this up. Okay, so I guess that doesn't work. Well, we could just source the environment file and then just run clj. Run like this. All of this goes against the whole don't export into your Linux environment, because I actually am doing that right now. Okay, so now we have everything exported out. And I did make one change to the env file, and that is to add the export keyword before everything. I'm not sure why it's exported to the environment, but not available to the program without it, but there it is. Now there's one last thing that I want to show about Aero, and for that we're in a different project. This is Chefy, which is a lot more complicated, as you can see. There's Clojure and also Clojure script. But the important thing is that we still have a config.eden file, which we're going to explore a little bit. And also this project is the course project that's offered by Jacek Shea. And I've been going through both of these, the reframe and the Rated, just for my own learning. If you're interested in learning through these courses, I do have an affiliate link in my description. So if you use that, that would be helpful for me. Now back into this project. You'll likely be familiar with what we've already used, which is the OR, as well as the env, but there's this tag here, the igref. And what ig is, it's integrant, and that's going to be related to the last video that I created. This tag literal is just another way of doing integrant.core/ref chefy app like this, but instead we have to use a tag literal because this is an EDN file and not a Clojure file. So if we go back to the core file of this project, we have integrant, but we also have Aero. And this goes into a very interesting thing about Aero is that you could create your own readers for whatever tag you want. It's using multi-methods, so you're adding another tag here, and what comes after is going to be the name of whatever that tag is. So here we're defining this as igref, and we return a function that calls the integrant ref on that value. And all the way down here, that's where we could call arrow/reconfig, and it'll have that updated new tag that it can read. This way, you can use all the different configuration readers all together, because Integrant has its own read config. However, it only is able to read the IG ref. Aero is a little more powerful in that it also takes into account environment variables and then other configuration tags that's included. And this wouldn't be complete without a demonstration, so let's open up a new REPL for this project. Go back here, let's connect and load our file. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Well, actually, we need to provide a file, so this will be Aero read config, and the file lives in resources/config.eden. Right, and let's run this. I'm not sure if you can see that, so let me just do this and clear some of this. So here is the result of reading the config. So we have the port, which is coming from our configuration file, ideally the environment, but we don't have an environment set up for this, so it's just the fallback of 3000. And we also have the long database string, which has the different parts. So we have the host, we have the database name, user, and password. And if we go on the left side and bring up the actual config, we can see that it does match. Oh, I guess I actually just wrote the entire thing here. Man, I'm lazy. Alright, anyways, back to the REPL. You'll also notice that where it says IGREF, it's replaced with key and then the qualified keyword of what it's referencing. So the handler for server Jetty is pointing to Chefy app, and then the JVC URL inside of Chefy app is pointing to DB Postgres. So our integrant references are all set up correctly. And once again, I did create a video on integrant, so if you're a little confused on how this works, I would suggest you check that out. So that's a little bit of how Aero works and how you can use it for environment variables and other configuration variables. And hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you'd like, and I'll see you all next time.